G'day and kia ora. My name is Amanda Newbery, and I'm joined here today with my friend and colleague Anne Patillo,
Kia
and we're
ora.
IAPT, we're IAPT trainers and course developers. And today we're excited. We're going to talk to you about the next evolution of engagement training by IAPT Australasia, and in particular, we're going to focus on the changes to the practice framework and the community engagement model. Um, Internationally, there is an IAP2 global learning pathway. And here in Australia and New Zealand, we've developed curriculum that meets local needs. And it means that our program of training is recognised internationally. The new curriculum that you'll be undertaking will provide skills-based learning to people and organisations in Australasia so that you can successfully develop, deliver and lead authentic engagement processes. The materials have been developed by a number of subject matter experts who are themselves highly experienced and highly regarded engagement practitioners throughout Australasia. Importantly, there's an increased focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a definite strengthening of online engagement throughout the courses. So let's get into talking about the key changes for the practice framework and the community engagement model that you need to know about. And I'm going to hand over to Anne to do that.
For those of you who've done the training a little earlier, you'll know this model used to be a 3-stage model. We've moved that model into 4 quadrants: design, plan, implement, and review. We've made some tweaks to language and we've made the steps clearer. Let me talk you through them. For the eagle-eyed among you, you will see that there have just been a few tweaks to the design quadrant. The major change is ensuring that we're clear about where the leadership for engagement sits before we think about what's the nature of the relationship and influence that would be best suited for the project we're engaging about. And that references really the innovation of the community engagement model that's prevalent across Australasia. So we've added determine leadership, then determining influence, and finally securing commitment from the engagement leader to the overall engagement design. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, you'll notice that in the plan quadrant, there've been a few changes. The changes have come from feedback from learners and from practitioners right across Australasia. The first is being able to determine the project stage. Where are we up to in the project and that we're engaging about? From there, that allows us to be able to set and determine the engagement objectives. What are we trying to achieve at each project stage in terms of the engagement itself? Those 2 elements are the foundations for the rest of the plan. No contemporary engagement plan would be complete without us needing to think about and have a plan in place for the management of any risks to and around the engagement itself. So that's the 3rd step and a new element in the plan. Select and design methods you'll all be very familiar with and sits to the core of the plan itself. And from there, we need to then think about the outputs from the plan and from the project, and that's about having a plan for reporting and evaluating the quality of the engagement in itself. By then, you're nearly done, but we need to think about what are the resources you need to enact the plan, and just before you hit go, you'll need to secure endorsement. That links to the commitment out of the design phase, quadrant. So, 2nd quadrant is plan, a few new steps, but still focused on creating an effective engagement plan. Implement is undertaking the engagement itself based on the plan, and here in terms of this quadrant, there've been a couple of additions, again to make clear one of the critical elements of engagement, and one of the things that makes community engagement distinctive is the elements of accountability and reporting. So here the stages will largely look familiar. we're looking to get people to think about how to activate participation and how to build relationships and engage, to deliver the engagement activities themselves, monitor and refine as you go, collect critical data so that you can then do two important pieces of reporting. One, to the decision makers, to the hosts of the engagement, if you like, the leaders of the engagement, and reporting back to the community to give effect to core values and to keep faith with this, being able to be transparent with community about what you heard, what you did, and what happens next. No quadrant-based model would be complete unless you had a fourth quadrant, and that's the new addition into this practice framework, review. It was present in the previous model, but here we've elevated that focus on evaluation and review, because right across Australasia, practitioners are being required not just to undertake great engagement, but also to be able to tell the story of the impact and quality of the engagement itself. And that story is both for decision makers and for community. Fourth quadrant, review.
Thanks so much, Anne. There's a lot of steps. I'm glad that you had to cover them. Most importantly, the key takeout is that if you follow those steps in the practice framework, it makes it possible to deliver effective engagement no matter what the project's about and no matter which communities or stakeholders you're working with. It's meant to be adaptable for the projects that you're on. It allows for every project to be done differently and really tailored to the specific circumstances and context of your local communities and the projects that you're working on. And so now it's time to talk about what we've done to add more detail and also to refine the community engagement model, which is sometimes referred to as the CEM. So here is the community engagement model. And when the model was first developed by Anne Patillo, myself, and Michelle Feenan, it was very forward-thinking. It was ahead of its time, and it was really meant to advance the practice and picked up on some of those emerging areas of practice where we realised that as engagement professionals and as organisations, we were not actually always leading engagement, and we needed to find a space to talk about that, and hence the community engagement model was born. This past 12 months, Anne and myself have played with that model and really brought it up to the year 2023, reflecting how that engagement model has taken hold and is being used across Australia, New Zealand, and now internationally. And so what I'm going to do is to just hand over to Anne to talk everyone through the model and to look at the axes.
Thanks, Amanda. The critical change to the presentation of the community engagement model is really what I like to think of as the backstage tour. And that's the introduction of the two axes. In truth, they've always been there because they're the critical tools to help us as practitioners to say, where do we stand on this model? Two questions. On the vertical axis is to think about who is responsible for leading the engagement. Who leads? And is that sitting inside an organisation through to sitting deeply into community? The second question is who is responsible for implementing the decision or undertaking the action? No decision is the end of the story. Every decision generates action or stops action. So the second question is responsible for doing the do. Again, from organisation to deep into community. So those are the first changes and improvements to the community engagement model. But from the world of wait, there's more. There's a second significant shift and addition to enrich the community engagement model. Amanda, tell us about the community engagement model commitments.
Thanks, Anne. And one of the important adaptations of the community engagement model is the introduction of commitments. And these are the commitments that we as an organisation make when we're operating in any of those 5 domains. I won't step you through all of the wording, but I'm just going to focus in on 3 of them. At the shared leadership and action domain, it's really important that when we operate here, there is a shared responsibility. And it starts from defining the problem right through to the engagement, right through to the action, and importantly, that we are working jointly towards these agreed outcomes. So that's a really deep commitment to make. At community advocacy, this is where we're not in control. And it's important to make a commitment where we talk about respecting the voice of community. And this idea that we will not only recognise that community is advocating for an outcome, but we will listen to, speak with, and work with in a productive way. And if we can implement some of their ideas, great, we will explain yes and how that will happen. And if not, we will do the same, but we'll do that in a respectful way. And the final one here is where community leads and acts. And in this particular domain, the commitment that we make is that we will support where possible, but also we'll recognise the good work where it's being done and to support that community to continue to lead and implement the work that they're doing. And so that's a important change, probably one of the newest concepts that have been introduced. It's probably a good time now to talk through the transitions.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about lots of changes. This actually is a confirmation of the power and the use of the community engagement model. These little arrows are simply to illustrate that through the life of a project, through the changing shape of relationships, and through the changing context of the work we undertake, where you started on the community engagement model may not be where you end up. And through the life of any major project, it may well be that you might start an organisational implementation and over time move to a situation where the actions and the leadership reside and sit in a community, or you may be in a situation where a problem and an opportunity has been identified in a community and you move from that community leading behaviour change and then moving into more organisational response. The last element that we've added is a clarity, really, about a question that we've often been asked, which is, where does this sit with the IEP2 spectrum? It's not a replacement, but it needs to live sympathetically with the IEP2 spectrum. And Amanda's going to just talk about an illustration we've developed to explain that more clearly. Amanda.
So this is the final piece of the puzzle for the community engagement update. And this really explicitly describes how the spectrum, IEPG spectrum, and the community engagement model speak to each other. The most important thing to see, it's pretty obvious, is that if you are the organisation and you have a role in hosting or leading that engagement process, then you really only have control in determining the level of the spectrum at 3 domains, and that's organisation implementation, shared leadership and action, and behaviour change. Most people will probably recognise that because the leadership role speaks to the organisation being able to determine the level of engagement, but we wanted to make it explicit. Importantly, at the shared leadership and action domain, you're operating at collaborate, and you're operating at collaborate through the decision-making process and through implementation. Finally, at behaviour change, you will see a note there about inform. Absolutely, there is a role for informing, but if you are only informing, it's simply not enough. You need to do more than inform at behaviour change. And so that brings to a close those changes that we have made, some edits and improvements to the community engagement model.
Well, Amanda, I think we're done. I know that for all of you, you've either started your learning journey or you're looking to start it soon. And this has been an attempt just to talk you through the improvements, really, and the continuing growth of the models of engagement, because engagement's on the move. It's developing every day we undertake engagement. And the purpose of this video has really been to bring you up to date with some of the current contemporary leading thinking and community engagement in Australasia and internationally. I'm sure that with me, along with me, Amanda will say, just enjoy the training, learn hard, have a good time, and better than that, enjoy engaging in practice in every single community across our 2 countries, and for all the thousands of purposes for engaging. Amanda, final word sits with you.
I would say go forth and engage, and really focus in on what are those great improvements that can be made through engagement to the way our cities, our streets, our suburbs, and our relationships occur. Good luck and thank you.
Arriba.